Evan Carlson.
Darren Stevens.
It's another episode of the Poetic Turn with Darren and Evan. If you're listening, thank you. If you're watching, I think we might have these on YouTube too, Evan. They won't see our faces, but we'll have some graphic up there. Because,
it's a great loss for them. It's a great loss.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. These skilled actor faces, these commercial faces. But Evan, you're mostly our content leader on the Poetic Turn, and once again, you've chosen a great subject for this podcast, a wonderful poem.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I guess we can jump right in a little bit. Today we're going to look at a poem called "The Fish" by Elizabeth Bishop. She's pretty interesting. I don't know a ton about her, but I know that she only published, I think it was 101 poems in her life, and apparently she was just such a perfectionist that she would sit on a poem for long amounts of time and never really finish it because she wanted it to be perfect. And so, which I think we can relate to in some ways, or not relate to.
Well, although they say if you want to get writing done, you need to just write and get it out. Or they also say writing is rewriting. So
yeah,
perhaps she had the right idea all along, of course.
Yeah.
But regardless, we have this masterpiece of a poem, and so however it came to be.
Well, and last episode we had Dan Smart, and he's very big about it. It's more about the process for him. He could kind of care less if a poem comes out of it. It's more about the writing of it and the noticing of things. So maybe it wasn't such a laborious process for her. I can hope for that.
Well, you have to. We talked a little bit about this in that episode with Dan Smart. The poetry becomes part of your life, and certainly for him, a person who's writing a poem almost every day of his life, you're leading this life, and it's I'm tasked with noticing things just to be alive in the world, but also because I'm a poet. If you're Dan Smart,
yeah.
So that observation, and certainly as we're going to hear in this poem by Elizabeth Bishop today, her keen observation of her object of attention. We're going
Absolutely.
To discover.
And we don't all have to become people who write poems every single day religiously, but we can borrow that noticing things. Yes. We can borrow that being aware from these poets and bring it into our own lives and get to enjoy poems like "The Fish." The Fish. Would you like to read it, Darren?
Sure, I'll read it. One of the things before we get started, before we read the poem, I was just talking to Evan before you started recording. This podcast, the Poetic Turn, Evan and I, neither Evan nor I we're not poets necessarily, certainly like Dan Smart, who writes a poem almost every day. We're not poetry teachers. I've written some poems, Evan's written some poems, but we're poetry enthusiasts. And I think the Poetic Turn is for people like us, people that love poetry, like poetry, want to learn more about poetry, want to be exposed to poetry. And so we're not more expert than the people that are listening to us right now. We're just enthusiasts. We're
at all
interested in these things.
Well, that's why I kind of like our title, because on one hand it is the Poetic Turn, which is this great part of a poem, but also, our lives aren't all about poetry, but in this we get to turn to poetry for a bit.
Yeah.
To enrich our lives.
Very well put. Very well said. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and I'll read this poem by Elizabeth Bishop. The Fish. I caught a tremendous fish and held him beside the boat, half out of water, with my hook fast in a corner of his mouth. He didn't fight. He hadn't fought at all. He hung a grunting weight, battered and venerable, and homely. Here and there his brown skin hung in strips, like ancient wallpaper, and its pattern of darker brown was like wallpaper, shapes like full-blown roses, stained and lost through age. He was speckled with barnacles, fine rosettes of lime, and infested with tiny white sea lice, and underneath 2 or 3 rags of green weed hung down, while his gills were breathing in the terrible oxygen, the frightening gills, fresh and crisp with blood, they can cut so badly. I thought of the coarse white flesh, packed in like feathers, the big bones and the little bones, the dramatic reds and blacks of his shiny entrails, and the pink swim bladder like a big peony. I looked into his eyes, which were far larger than mine, but shallower and yellowed, the irises backed and packed with tarnished tinfoil, seen through the lenses of old scratched isinglass. They shifted a little, but not to return my stare. It was more like the tipping of an object toward the light. I admired his sullen face, the mechanism of his jaw, and then I saw that from his lower lip, if you could call it a lip, grim, wet, and weapon-like, hung 5 old pieces of fish line, or 4 and a wire leader with the swivel still attached, with all their 5 big hooks grown firmly in his mouth, a green line frayed at the end where he broke it, 2 heavier lines, and a fine black thread still crimped from the strain and snap when it broke and he got away, like metals with their ribbons frayed and wavering, a 5-haired beard of wisdom trailing from his aching jaw. I stared, and victory filled up the little rented boat. From the pool of bilge where oil had spread a rainbow around the rusted engine to the bailer rusted orange, the sun-cracked thwarts, the oarlocks on their strings, the gunwales, until everything was rainbow, rainbow, rainbow. And I let the fish go.
I want you to read every poem that I like to me, because that is just terrific.
Well, you're very kind, my friend. I think I'm a good reader. That's what I do for
a great
my living.
reader. A great reader.
That's what I do for my living. Well, you've already got the job, Evan. You're already my podcast co-host. No, but you're very kind. Oh my gosh, what a magnificent poem. Reading it, her line breaks are so great. Everything is so right about this poem.
Yeah, it feels like something that just had to have existed.
Yeah, it's kind of a perfect thing. You're right. And you just have this image of this. The images are so clear in his eyes, and you can even see inside the fish, his bones, his flesh, his entrails.
No, I love this poem because it makes me emotional, especially halfway through, and it's not that all that much is happening really. It's not a terribly complicated story, but it's like the speaker takes you through all these things that they're noticing, and you yourself, at least for me, I feel like I go through the process with them of deciding, I can't keep this fish.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's almost heartbreaking to look at it and even consider taking it,
And, I had some emotion when I first read it as well, Evan, and tell me if you agree with me. There's this, you're looking at, we're doing this intimate, close gaze at this weary fighter, like the same kind of emotion we might have when hearing the song The Boxer by Simon Garfunkel.
Yeah.
This person that's been out there in the world, in the water, and he's fought and fought and fought, and now we see him brought to the side of this boat, and this person's looking at this fish. He's in her control now, and so this will likely be the end of his days after this long battle. And is it time for him to rest now? There was some commentary I read on that page about the fact that this poem was written after a world war, people weary after war, and the fish could take the place of people weary from having suffered through a war, just the weariness.
Yeah, and there's these fish hooks.
Yeah. It
says they're like ribbons and
metals
from war, and it's one of those things that when you really just look at it, that's what this poem is all for me about, is like when you just look at everything that's happening here, we're just given what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it still impacts us because
Yeah.
we may have looked the other way. If we were walking along the path and saw somebody with this fish, we wouldn't look at all this. We wouldn't think of all this. We wouldn't see those rainbows. I mean, what do you think of those last two lines? Everything was rainbow, rainbow, rainbow.
Well, I had to, when I read it over, having read it a few times, you see that rainbow goes from, that rainbow is spread throughout the boat. Oil had spread a rainbow around the rusted engine to the baler rusted orange, the sun-cracked thwarts, the oarlocks on their strings, the gunnels, until everything was rainbow, rainbow, rainbow. So that rainbow is like covering, well, multiple lines there, and certainly a significant part of the boat.
It's covering the boat, and I love the repetition of it because it's like this building of energy.
Yeah.
It's that, you're holding this fish, you're looking around you, and all you can see is rainbows, and you see this fish, the weathered, tremendous fish.
Yeah, yeah.
And when it all comes together in this moment, there's the turn, and I let the fish go.
Yeah.
Because when you take it all in, you just have to, it incites compassion, or it incites just some emotion, something that is larger than ourselves.
Absolutely. It's interesting. Yeah, there's this build-up, and there's this build-up that there's one kind of build-up. I stared, and victory filled up the little rented boat. So this triumph over this warrior, she has this triumph, but then she continues looking, and the rainbow. Yeah, how do we get from victory through the rainbow to her letting the fish go?
I stared, and victory filled up the little rented boat. I mean, there's already some juxtaposition, this victory in a little rented boat.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's just one of those things that works. I'm sure there's more to it, but when I read it, it does something for me,
Yeah.
And I also love, that this turn, this great turn and I let the fish go, is at the end,
Yeah.
Because if it started with, I caught a tremendous fish, and before I let it go, I held him beside the boat.
Yeah.
And I did this. And then, and it could end on until everything was rainbow, rainbow, rainbow,
Yeah.
But she puts it off, so it feels like there is a choice that's coming up.
Yeah.
And it's a longer poem. It's not as short as any one that we've done so far. And it's sort of, I at least feel that because it's long and sort of narrow, it's building this tension because you don't really know if she's going to let the fish go.
Yeah.
And there's some clues that say maybe she won't.
And maybe there's tension built up by the shorter lines. The lines have three or five words.
Yeah.
The pattern of, if we'd had more things that were meant to be more like paragraphs, maybe we wouldn't have the same kind of tension build up.
Yeah, it does, because I mean, it's almost, sometimes poems for me are like page turners, but each page is a line.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite kind of thing, where you just want to see what's next.
Yeah.
And I mean, the beautiful description in this really makes me turn the page.
We will, my plan was, again, this is early days for our podcast, my plan is to have in all of our episodes a link to read the poems, and I expect we'll have that for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Encourage listeners, our listeners, to read the poem over for yourself and take in these images, spend some time with it as we have done, and it's rewarding to do that and to really revel in some of these images.
Oh yeah, and if you do find that you connect with a poem even a little bit, I mean, keep it somewhere. You could print it out. You could put it in a note in your phone, just somewhere where you keep some poems that you love.
Yeah.
And then maybe, you get home after work and you say, I feel weary right now. I want to read the fish because that fish was weary too. But things like that. It's just a way to keep it in your mind because if I read this tomorrow, it might be a little different.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we bring a lot. We certainly bring our own experiences, and Evan and I come from different places and different connections to poetry, and we come together over the same poem. So this poem's kind of brought us together for this podcast episode today. But yeah, where are we when we read a poem? How does it hit us? Or did we just have a fight with our partner, or did we oh
yeah,
have something rotten happen to us on our computer that's just annoying and we're feeling weary? Well, or not as weary as a fish that's nearly been caught 5 times.
Yeah. And you know what? If you also like a poem, what we're doing here where we read to one another, I think that, go up to somebody in your life and say, I read this poem and I just want to read it to you. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to have any expectations going into that,
Or Evan, you can say, there's this great podcast called The Poetic Turn, and they read the poem, this magnificent poem by this celebrated poet. You really should go to that episode of The Poetic Turn and listen to how they shared this poem.
Because I could not do it justice reading it to you here. Put in some headphones.
You really need to have Evan and Darren go through the thing for you to really make it sing.
Oh yeah. No, this is a great one, and I sometimes feel bad about not knowing, the full life story of each poet that I really enjoy reading. But one of my favorite poets, Mark Yakic, who also wrote a book about poetry, he sort of has this idea that really you don't need to know anything about a poet. In fact, it might be a bad thing to know something about the poet you're reading, because he thinks that. Just look at the poem and do with it what you will. You don't need to know that they wrote this because they grew up in a 4x4 apartment complex, and that's why they use the number 4 in their poems. He thinks you should just read it as it is. So I don't always feel bad.
And we've talked about that don't dive into a poem and look for what does it mean? What does it mean? Just
what does it
let
mean?
it wash over you. Let it wash over you. Just take it in.
Yeah, why did they write that? What personal details? Sometimes there might be nothing, and so you don't have to feel like you have to embark on an entire journey into an author just because you like one of their poems. But it could be fun too.
Yeah, well, I got to, I'm reading Mark Yakic's book and just did the chapter on Dickinson.
And which one is this?
The book you recommended to me.
Oh, yes. The Poetry Reader.
Poetry Reader. A wonderful overview of poetry in general by a terrific teacher and mentor of...
Well, he mentor in words only.
Okay.
Mike Tooney's more of the mentor. They both have M names.
Okay. But certainly, it's a wonderful overview book about poetry, and we'll put a link in the show notes to this magnificent book. And he has a chapter on Dickinson, and you could spend... People have spent entire careers with that one poet, Emily.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll read some of her stuff on here.
Of course. Yeah. Well, Evan, we can wrap it up here. I think we're going to let people know about this magnificent poem, "The Fish" by Elizabeth Bishop, and encourage people to go to the poem after listening to our podcast today, read it over for yourselves, and celebrate it and enjoy it.
Absolutely. And read it out loud. Read it out loud. That can be, I think, Mark Yakic, again, I'm thinking about him now. He says that to read a poem out loud is the single greatest way to disrupt the soul in a good way.
Yeah. That's valuable. Yeah. That makes sense. Well, Evan, disrupting my day for another Poetic Turn podcast, I thank you so much for joining me, like always.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, and I'm going to hit stop on record, but I think we'll still be together. So I'm going to do that thing. Okay, so
perfect.
So I'm going to do another thank you to Evan, and thanks again, Evan, for working with me on another episode of The Poetic Turn. Hey, everybody, like and share, do all the stuff you do, and tell your friends if you're enjoying our podcast. Evan, I will see you next time.
See you, Darren.